We open with a terror shooting attack on Highway 4 near Ashdod in southern Israel. A police officer was murdered in the attack and 4 others wounded. The wounded were evacuated to Asuta Hospital, among them a doctor who stopped to help the wounded and then was injured himself. According to reports, the terrorist approached the junction and started shooting in all directions. He was later neutralized by an armed citizen who was nearby. And in other news, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has informed the Biden-Harris administration that Israel will not attack the Islamic Republic of Iran's oil and nuclear facilities, according to a report Tuesday in the Washington Post. Citing 2 officials familiar with the matter, the report said Netanyahu told Biden during their phone call last week that Israel was willing to strike military targets, suggesting a more limited counterstrike aimed at preventing a full-scale war, as well as preventing any type of interference in the upcoming U.S. presidential elections. The Biden administration has publicly opposed Israel's targeting of oil and nuclear sites, while former U.S. President Donald Trump has publicly expressed his support of such a strike. The report also stated that following the call, President Biden approved the deployment of THAAD missile defense systems to Israel. This crucial support comes as the Financial Times reported today that Israel is facing a severe shortage of interceptor missiles. In response to the report, the Prime Minister's office said in a statement that while Israel listens to America's opinions, the final decisions will be based on Israel's national interests. As such, Netanyahu has been holding nightly consultations with defense and security officials over the scope and timing of the strike. Last night, Netanyahu met with senior security officials and several ministers to discuss scenarios for the response. This is after Netanyahu held more intimate discussions with Defense Minister Yoav Gallant and IDF Chief Herzi Halevi on Sunday, where the security and intelligence officials presented operational plans for an attack. The next step will now be for the War Cabinet to grant approval to the Prime Minister and Defense Minister to carry out the counterattack. And joining us now with more on the Israeli counterstrike against the Islamic Republic of Iran is Dr. Tamal Gindin, an Iranian specialist at the University of Haifa's Esli Center for Iran and Persian Gulf Studies. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. So
I know Haifa's been the main target of missiles from Iran's proxy Hezbollah, so hope you're safe. And I want to ask, it seems an Israeli retaliation for the Islamic Republic of Iran's ballistic missile attack is inching closer, but it's all sort of playing out quite in the open. It seems as Israel's now reportedly announced it won't target the nuclear sites or the oil fields. I mean, what do you make of this?
First of all, I think just like they enjoyed watching us hit and then getting scared, we're now watching them getting scared after they hit and speculating what it will be, when it will be, how it will be. So there's what the Iranians said, the fear of death is sometimes worse than death itself. I think there is this game, and there is also the fact that none of the sides wants a full-fledged war and to get the whole area into war, even though the other side does think that Israel wants to get the U.S. and Iran into war with each other and the whole region. And also, as the item just before me said, if we don't have enough missile interceptors, we might want to wait until we do. Because after the Iranian attack on October 1st, they called it the first wave of the revenge for Nasrallah and Haniya and the last deaths. And they said that the second wave depends on Israel's response. So we don't want our response to be too much or make them send more missiles while we can't defend ourselves. So there's also this, and of course, the upcoming elections in the U.S.
Mm-hmm. And what about on the Iranian side? I mean, you talked about it a little bit, but what is the reaction you're seeing coming from inside Iran, coming from the regime over the anticipated Israeli strike? Are they sort of fearful for an Israeli strike?
What they say, what we see in the newspapers and in speeches, is that they're not afraid, of course. They don't want to increase tension in the region. They don't want the region to go into war, but they are fully prepared and not afraid of anything. Where we do see their fear is in the numbers of executions. When the Islamic Republic is afraid to be presented or perceived as weak or is flexible, we see a rise in the numbers of executions. And according to what I read, I read a report on Twitter, just around the Iranian strike on Israel, there were 30 executions in 2 days. It's more than some of the month. In some months, we don't have 30 executions in 1 month. In others, we do. So this, to my interpretation, shows that they are afraid. They're, of course, they don't want to show it. And they also know what our situation is.
And we know there is great unrest within Iran. Today you mentioned, for example, the executions. The people of Iran are not behind the regime. I mean, do you foresee a scenario where an Israeli attack could further mobilize the people of Iran to perhaps even overthrow this regime?
I see opposition members say on Twitter, Israel hit, the rest is with us. You will hit and we will and we will take to the streets and take Iran back to the Iranian people, because the Islamic regime has been in war with the Iranian people for 45 years now. So the Iranian people, some of the opposition members do think that that it can happen. I'm not a prophet, so I can't say whether it would be successful, but this is one thing we do see on social media.
All right, Dr. Tamal Gindin, thank you so much for your analysis today.
Thank you very much.
And incoming Hezbollah rocket fire is continuing, despite Israel making major headway in dismantling Hezbollah capabilities. During the past day, much of the country was required to shelter as rocket fire reached as far south as Nes Ziona, south of Tel Aviv. ILTV's Devo Klein has the latest.
Alerts were activated this morning in the areas of Khaf Karmel and Wadi Ara. 2 launches were detected and were successfully intercepted by air defense. Incoming Hezbollah rocket fire is continuing and is reaching ever deeper into Israel. Yesterday, attacks reached as far south as Nes Ziona, southeast of Tel Aviv. Most rockets were shot by air defense or hit empty areas. Several rockets made impact, but no injuries were reported. Israel was deeply saddened by the sight of 4 funerals for the young Israeli recruits killed in the Sunday night Hezbollah drone strike on the Golani Brigade training base. In yet another indication of the unity within Israeli society, many Jewish Israelis attended the funeral for Sergeant Yosef Haib in the northern Bedouin town of Tuba, Zangaria.
And the Shin Bet has revealed shocking details about a recent suicide bombing in Tel Aviv, a terror plot directed by Hamas from Turkey. ILTV's Devo Klein has the story.
On August 18th, a powerful explosion was felt on Lehi Street in Tel Aviv. The intended terror attack was carried out by Jafar Muna, a Hamas operative from Nablus who died in the blast. The investigation uncovered a Hamas cell in the Nablus area led by commanders in Turkey. The Shin Bet and the IDF arrested key members of the cell who were in direct contact with senior Hamas figure Abdallah Bilal, a terrorist released in the Gilad Shalit deal who is now operating from Turkey. One of the operatives made multiple trips to Turkey where he received funding and explosives training. As part of the investigation, 2 4-kilogram explosives ready for use in further attacks were seized, along with additional explosives intended for future attacks on Israel.
And the IDF is continuing to advance against Hezbollah in South Lebanon. Prime Minister Netanyahu denied claims that Israel has halted bombing terror targets in Beirut and once again reiterated his demand that UNIFIL forces leave the battlefield. ILTV's Steve Leibovitz reports.
The IDF continues its ground operation in dozens of Lebanese villages in close proximity to the Israeli border, destroying Hezbollah infrastructure. The IDF captured an underground base of Hezbollah in South Lebanon that was intended for use in a planned October 7th style attack on North Israel. The compound belonged to the elite Radwan force of Hezbollah. It includes 800 meters of tunnels and is located under a civilian village.
We're now in the bunker that we found underneath a Lebanese house in a Shia village only a couple of kilometers from our border. This bunker was ready for Radwan forces for a battalion of Radwan forces to enter into this bunker and do a raid into Israel and do a larger scale of massacre than the 7th of October. They were planned with the motorcycles here to go to Kiryat Shmona, to Iftach, to villages and positions inside Israel and conduct a massacre.
The Air Force is continuing strikes on South Lebanon, degrading Hezbollah rocket and rocket launching capabilities. The airstrikes also targeted an apartment complex occupied by Hezbollah operatives in the southern suburbs of Beirut. Israeli planes have not attacked inside the Lebanese capital during the past several days. This amid reports that Prime Minister Netanyahu promised President Biden that Israel would avoid attacks in central Beirut. Netanyahu insists that Beirut is not off limits.
אני רוצה להבהיר, אנחנו נמשיך להכות בחיזבאללה ללא רחם, בכל חלקי לבנון, גם בביירות.
UNIFIL says it will defy Israeli orders and will stay in all positions in Lebanon. The statement prompted Prime Minister Netanyahu to issue a firmer warning.
Hezbollah uses UNIFIL facilities and positions as cover while it attacks Israeli cities and communities. These attacks have claimed the lives of many Israelis.
And now, what is Israel's greatest resource? The answer may surprise you. For every high-tech revolution ignited by the startup nation, there are people behind the technology. So join leading experts to discover how engineers and other innovators are driving Israel's prosperity and shaping its future, all while navigating a multi-front war. Be part of the conversation on October 21st. Join ILTV and Afeka Academic College of Engineering for a free webinar at 9 p.m. Israel time or 2 p.m. Eastern time next week. Register now by scanning the QR code on the screen. And moving on, the IDF operation in northern Gaza is continuing as the army works to prevent the resurfacing of Hamas cells. More from ILTV's Steve Leibovitz.
The IDF continues intense operations in Gaza designed to prevent surviving members of the defeated Hamas brigades from emerging from underground tunnels. Day 375 of the war in Gaza, the IDF announced that Sergeant Koren Bitan, aged 19, was killed in battle in Rafah. Fighter jets eliminated Samer Abu Daqqa, head of the Hamas air formation, who replaced the group's previous commander, killed by the IDF last December. IDF maneuvers are continuing in northern Gaza. Fighter jets also struck a Hamas command center that had opened in the Al-Aqsa hospital complex in northern Gaza. There were reports of casualties among combatants and civilians. And Israeli authorities say humanitarian aid has been allowed into northern Gaza. It was the first time since the IDF launched the renewed offensive in northern Gaza that aid has been allowed in, and follows warnings of impending humanitarian disaster from the UN and the U.S.
And now, as Israel gets ready to celebrate the holiday of Sukkot, we learn more about one of our more ancient wines, produced in the heart of Israel. Sheilo Winery has mastered the art of winemaking, blending ancient techniques with cutting-edge technology. Let's take a look.
In the heart of Israel, the Sheilo region is not just a site of historical significance, but also a flourishing hub for viticulture. The winery draws inspiration from this rich history, crafting wines that embody the spirit of the region.
Sheilo dates back 3,000 years of growing vines and producing wine in this area. If you walk around the vineyards and the area here in Sheilo, you can find ancient wine presses that date back 2,000 and 3,000 years ago.
Sheilo Winery has mastered the art of winemaking, blending ancient techniques with cutting-edge technology. Their dedication to quality is evident in every step.
To make really amazing wine, everything starts from the grapes themselves and from the land. The better and the more effort that we put into the vineyards and into the grapes and into the vines, it makes the work at the winery that much easier.
This relentless pursuit of excellence ensures that Sheilo consistently produces some of the best wines in the region.
To make high-end wines, you need really good barrels. But to make it even better, you have to find the right kind of barrel for the right kind of wine. And finding that match is a big challenge. That's why we taste regularly all these wines. We experiment regularly with different kinds of barrels. We try to upgrade every single year.
Sheilo Winery offers an impressive range of wines, from robust reds to crisp whites and elegant rosés. Each bottle tells a story. Sheilo's dedication to excellence has not gone unnoticed. The winery has garnered numerous awards on the global stage.
All our wines we send to competitions year after year consistently. The wines are getting ratings in the 90s, from 90 to 96. We're very, very proud.
This year has been challenging for Israel, with the ongoing war affecting many. Despite these hardships, Sheilo Winery has remained resilient.
Last year's harvest was extremely challenging because the end of the harvest, the war already started, and most of our team were enlisted immediately, and we were left with a skeleton crew. We barely finished the harvest. We literally, some of the vineyards were harvested under fire, but when the going gets tough, the tough get going.
Beyond just producing wine, Sheilo Winery offers an immersive experience for visitors. Guests are invited to discover the full story behind every glass.
Petit Syrah, Merlot, my favorite, Cabernet Franc.
Sheilo Winery is more than just a producer of fine wines. It's a guardian of tradition, a beacon of innovation, and a destination for those seeking a deeper connection with the land and its history.
Here at Sheilo Winery, as people already know, we take things to the extreme. We try to make the best wines we can. When we built the new facility, we took all the experience of the past 18 years to do things that much better.
Visit Sheilo Winery, where every bottle is a journey through time.
And the Jewish world will be celebrating tomorrow evening the holiday of Sukkot. Joining us now in the studio to tell us about the meaning of the holiday is founding rabbi at the Tel Aviv International Synagogue, Rabbi Ariel Constantine. Thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.
So what is the meaning of Sukkot? Why do Jews celebrate this holiday?
So there are a number of reasons. One of them is that when we left Egypt and we spent 40 years in the desert, so we were dwelling in these huts. And one of the things it is to remind us of our humble beginnings and to appreciate what we have. We live in homes which are comfortable, beds and roofs over our heads, and everything is nice, air conditioning, comforts. But yet, when we leave the home and we enter into this temporary sukkah and we're eating out there, and there's flies and bees maybe it's a little too hot, a little too cold, sleeping in the sukkah on a mattress on the floor. But we start to appreciate the things that we take for granted and we have in our homes. We celebrate the blessings that God has given us. That's one angle. As well as in the desert, we had what was called the Ananei Kavod, the clouds of glory that protect us, like a little echo bubble that protected us in the desert. And we want to also express our faith, because when we go into the sukkah, there's no doors to be locked. And it might rain, from the roof that's thatched from vegetation and not a sealed roof. And therefore, we're expressing as well our faith in God, that God will protect us and care for us even under non-ideal conditions.
And so, of course, the sukkah is the most common symbol associated with this holiday, but there are other symbols as well, and I see that you've brought some of them with us. So can you share with us some of the other symbols?
Absolutely. This is known as Arbat Aminim, the four species, or commonly known as the lulav and etrog, even though that's only two of them. It says in the Torah that you shall take these four species on the first day of Sukkot, and we actually now practice them 7 days, because in the temple, once back in Jerusalem, used to do it for 7 days, so remember that. The lulav comes from a palm tree, a date palm tree. This is a myrtle, okay? This is a willow, and this is known as the etrog or a citron. And they have many different symbolisms. First of all, some of them represent the parts of the body. This represents the spine, okay, the backbone. These represent, if you take a look, the leaves look like eyes. Okay, these leaves look like lips, okay, and the etrog looks like the heart. So that we serve God with all parts of our body, our eyes, our spine, our hearts, and our lips when we pray. It also represents different types of Jews. The etrog has a delicious smell and a flavor. And for that's a Jew who's rich in knowledge of Judaism and Torah, and also does a lot of good deeds, a lot of acts of kindness, and a lot of mitzvot. Then you have the hadas that has a beautiful smell, but no good taste. And that's someone who has a lot of good deeds. Someone who does good deeds has a good smell, because they're always helping people, but not a lot of knowledge, not someone who's studying a lot of tradition. The date palm actually has dates, so that has good taste, The date palm itself doesn't have a good smell, so that's someone who has a lot of knowledge but doesn't do a lot of good deeds. And then the willow has no smell and no taste. So it's kind of, quote unquote, the good for nothing, the one who doesn't do any good deeds and doesn't have any knowledge. But here's the thing. On Rosh Hashanah, we said, "V'ye'asu kulam aguda achat." We should make everybody one bundle, bring everybody together. And that's not just the Jews, that's everybody. All human beings should come together as one. And we should embrace everybody. So we take all these species, all the different types of people, and we hold them together. And we physically enact what we said on the high holidays and say, we are one people, one world, and we need to be all united as one. And we physically hold them together, and that's the mitzvah. We shake it as well. But the actual mitzvah is simply to hold them together and to embrace all human beings.
And I want to ask, briefly, we're, of course, here in Israel in the middle of a war. And so how does this affect at all, Jews here in Israel celebrating the holiday?
Oh, it's a lot of mixed emotions, that's for sure, especially as we come up on Simchat Torah, which is a Jewish anniversary of October 7th. And it's going to be very bittersweet, because on the one hand, we're going to be remembering all the horrors and the tragedy and the pain and the loss and the suffering. And we've been through that, not just on that day, but throughout the year. And on the other side, we don't want terror to win. And we want to say life will go on. If we stop our lives, then the terror wins. So we're going to continue to celebrate, but in a somewhat of a muted sense. And we're going to sing for those who can sing and celebrate for those who can and pray for them. We pray every day and every Shabbat that the hostages should be freed and our soldiers to come home safe and sound. And we're going to do that with great intensity on Simchat Torah and over the holiday of Sukkot, which is known as the holiday of joy. But I think it's going to be a little bit of a mixed feeling holiday as well. So we're a little bit of tempered joy, I would say. But nonetheless, the joy must go on. We must continue to sing and dance for those who can't, and pray that, God willing, they'll join us and dance with us.
Absolutely. Rabbi Constantine, thank you so much for joining us. We're wishing you and all of our viewers a happy Sukkot.
Chag Sameach, happy Sukkot to all.
And now, let's see how the Jewish people in the diaspora are preparing for Sukkot. ILTV's correspondent Ariel is in London now with more.
Since the beginning of Israel's war against Hamas around this time last year, we have seen a great rise in anti-Semitism worldwide. And as we approach the Jewish holiday of Sukkot, one might expect Jewish communities to celebrate a bit more differently and quietly this year. However, I'm here in London, and the Jewish community is definitely still celebrating very proudly, building their sukkahs in public and not bowing down to any hatred.
We also know that there are a lot of people who unfortunately don't like the Jewish people, and wherever we go they try to make their mark, but we are not being bothered. We are standing proud. Am Yisrael Chai. We are who we are. As you see, our sukkah right here outside Chabad of Golders Green, right here on the high street, and our people, our boys, our girls will go out with the lulav and esrog, getting people who haven't done the mitzvah yet, giving them the opportunity to still shake it, and we are still going to stand strong and do what's right.
Thank you, Ariella from London. And now, let's take a look at the weather forecast. Mostly clear skies are expected tonight around the country, with temperatures reaching lows of around 20 degrees Celsius or 69 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow, mostly sunny skies and warm weather is expected, as temperatures should climb to reach highs of 30 degrees Celsius or 85 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's a wrap for today's news. And just a reminder, we'll not be broadcasting for the rest of the week due to the Jewish holiday. But for the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channel, subscribe to our newsletter, and explore our website, iltv.tv. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Lidar Gravelazi. Be well, and thank you so much for watching.